Hey, this is Zulema Urbina, and tune into the relay for the latest news in boxing all around the world. Thank you for supporting myself and other female boxers. We truly appreciate it.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. I'm sure you've heard already that the WBA Championships Committee has ordered their champion at super featherweight, Hyun-Mi Choi, to take on the only other champion at this weight, Alicia Baumgardner, an order that I think...
It's a pleasant surprise. I half expected them to order Hyun-Mi Choi to fight Ramona Grave, the #1 contender in their current rank standings.
Secondary WBA gold champion, the World Boxing Association, through its Championships Committee, ordered the bout between super featherweight champion Hyun-Mi Choi and American Alicia Baumgardner, owner of the WBC, IBF, and WBO belts. The WBA has put all its efforts in one boxing project, which seeks to give the possibility to the champions to unify their crowns. And in this case, after an analysis, it was determined that there is no impediment for the champion of the Pioneer organization to face the American for the undisputed 130-pound title. The committee placed Baumgardner as the mandatory challenger, and now the teams of both fighters will have a period of 30 days to negotiate the fight and reach an agreement. This mandate is very similar to the previous mandate we saw ordering Erica Cruz, the WBA's featherweight champion, to take on Amandia Serrano
For the undisputed crown at featherweight, this mandate comes to us by way of the super featherweight division.
If only the WBA were this Johnny on the spot with the boys. They seem to be doing their job, doing all right with the girls.
If the fight does not take place within the period granted, or in the event that either party refuses to sign a contract, the committee may order a purse bid with a 50% split for each of the champions.
This decision renders any previous ruling null and void. Choi has a record of 20 wins, no losses with 1 draw and 5 knockouts. Baumgardner has a record of 13 wins with 1 loss and 7 knockouts. And on paper, Choi may seem...
I mean, she is this division's longest reigning champion, and she does have more professional bouts and more professional experience, more rounds in the bank than Alicia.
At least on paper she does, but I say it all the time. There's more to boxing, there's more to this sport than what you see on paper.
You know what this sort of really means? It really means that the WBA is not going to get in the way of this fight. If anything, they're going to push to make it happen. They're clearing the way.
They're not going to order Hyun-Mi Choi to fight some contender in their rank standings. They're actually ordering the fight that the division needs and the fight that the fight fans want.
Welcome news.
Though the one who really is on the hook here is Hyun-Mi Choi, more so than Alicia, because Alicia doesn't hold a title with the WBA. So hypothetically speaking, if she were to walk away from this, she'd walk away scot-free without penalty. But if it's Hyun-Mi Choi that doesn't want to comply, if it's Hyun-Mi Choi that were to, hypothetically, try and walk away, she'd be stripped of her WBA title because she's the WBA champion. She's the one that's got to play ball and abide by their rules.
For what it's worth, in the build-up of this mandate, of this order, it already looked like Hyun-Mi Choi was going to play ball.
This mandate really just helps to facilitate the match and ensure that negotiations run smoothly, that nothing gets in the way.
Elsewhere in the division, Michaela Mayer, former unified super featherweight champion Michaela Mayer, states her next move is in motion.
She's obviously not going to get Alicia Baumgardner in the ring for a rematch, even though she wants one, and she's been very vocal about it. I have it on good authority.
Came across a bit of inside intel that seems to indicate Michaela Mayer may go into a fight with Delphine Persoon, former lightweight champion by way of the WBC. Delphine Persoon, current reigning WBC silver champion at super featherweight.
She was in action this past weekend against Ikram Kurwat in a contest that was ruled a no contest after Delphine Persoon quite deliberately hit a downed Ikram Kurwat. She's lucky that it was ruled a no contest as opposed to a DQ, because she would have lost her WBC silver title had she been disqualified. It's my understanding, based on inside sources,
the wheels may already be in motion for a Michaela Mayer versus Delphine Persoon fight, and if Michaela can get her in the ring and beat her,
she will in effect become the mandatory challenger for the winner of Baumgardner versus Choi. Well, I have no doubts will end up being Alicia Baumgardner. I think Alicia is going to knock out Hyun-Mi Choi.
And if Michaela does end up fighting Delphine Persoon and she beats her, she'll become Alicia's mandatory challenger. That may result in 2 things.
One of 2 situations, one of 2 outcomes. It's either we get the rematch between Alicia and Michaela, or Alicia keeps good on her word, moves up in weight to lightweight, vacates those titles, at which point Michaela Mayer can pick at least one of them up.
The green belt, the WBC title, 'Cause in this hypothetical scenario, she would have already beaten Delphine Persoon and become WBC Silver Champion. That's if this intel checks out.
Still very early, and there's a lot of room for change. Don't forget that the WBO very recently issued out a show cause letter to welterweight champion Jessica McCaskill. They wanted a show cause as to why she should be allowed to hang on to the WBO title, it being, by way of their provisions, she lost the Chantel Cameron fight, and a part of the agreement they reached that allowed that contest to go on
was that if Jessica loses to Chantel, the WBO title at 147 pounds would become vacant.
The title isn't vacant yet, but if it becomes vacant, you know what might happen? Maybe Michaela Mayer moves up to welterweight and picks it up. Bob Arum, the people over there at Top Rank, they've always had a way with the WBO. Very recently, we saw two super featherweights move up in weight all the way up there to junior middleweight, Natasha Jonas and Terry Harper. So if Natasha and Terry can move up to 154, who's to say that Michaela won't move up to 147 for the right fight?
But a chance to become a two-division champion.
Now that bit of it, that's just me bouncing ideas around based on what's going on in the sport. Inside intel indicates that Mayer versus Persoon is a distinct possibility.
We'll see if that intel checks out. If it doesn't, there's an avenue of opportunity up there at welterweight for Michaela Mayer to possibly become a welterweight champion.
It all depends on whether or not the WBO decide to let Jessica hang on to that belt, or they decide to strip her. If they do,
we talked about all that in my previous video.
These are the first insights, preliminary insights into what the future might hold for former unified super featherweight champion Michaela Mayer. Men's heavyweight news, some interesting comments from Deontay Wilder's trainer Malik Scotch, who says Usyk should just fight Deontay. There's no telling what Fury will do.
Now, we all know that Wilder-Usyk's not at liberty to take on any voluntary challengers at this time unless he's prepared to vacate the red belt.
Currently under orders to fight Croatia's own unbeaten up-and-comer, Hrgovic.
So what's interesting about this article isn't even the proposition of a Wilder versus Usyk fight. I already told you, I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Malik Scotch believes Fury is too erratic to wait for because nobody knows what the Gypsy King could do next. Fury has retired and unretired several times since April. Wilder recently broke his year-long layoff. He returned to the ring for the first time since dropping a knockout loss to Fury in their fantastic trilogy fight, which occurred in October of 2021. And Wilder made a comeback statement with a first-round blowout of Robert Helenius in October of 2022, this year. Scotch feels the big puncher is back to his dangerous self. I think he should hold off on Fury and wait for us. Just fight us. One, because there's no telling what Fury's going to do. There's no telling, Scotch told ES News, and
there should be no room for ambiguity as far as what Deontay Wilder is going to be doing. The WBC already ordered him to fight Andy Ruiz.
It's an in-house fight between two former champions, two PBC fighters, so it should be relatively easy to make. In my previous video, we talked about that fight and what Andy had to say about it. You look at Team Wilder and what they're saying.
I don't know.
I'm just greedy. I like the position that my guy Deontay is in right now. Mentally, physically, spiritually. He's just in a very dangerous space right now, and I want Usyk to fight the most dangerous fighter in the world. Like I said, don't nobody respect Usyk on U.S. soil the way I do. But I also know who I'm training is the most lethal fighter in the history of the sport.
More hyperbole.
Moral encouragement, positive reinforcement from one friend to another. I mean, they're not just trainer and fighter. Malik Scotch and Deontay Wilder have been good friends for some time. But what I found most interesting about these quotes is that
Usyk's got a lot of things going on right now. Potential Tyson Fury undisputed title fight. An order from the IBF to fight Filip Hrgovic.
And irrespective of what Usyk's got going on, Deontay Wilder's got that Andy Ruiz fight to think about.
The order's already come down from the WBC, and the way is clear for that fight. There are no network and promotional politics to have to work through. They're both PBC fighters.
This fight services as a segue to a Tyson Fury fight. The winner of the fight becomes Tyson Fury's mandatory challenger, but maybe that's why.
I don't know, but maybe that's why. At least Malik Scotch. Sounds like he has a wavering commitment to an Andy Ruiz fight. The fact that he's so vehement.
Insistent that Deontay fight Usyk when Usyk has other plans.
Tied up right now. Your dance partner is supposed to be Andy Ruiz in what is a WBC final eliminator. A segue to another Fury fight, but maybe that's why Malik...
Maybe that's why Malik seems more interested in exploring other avenues of opportunity to a world title, other options. The path that his handlers have him set on is an Andy Ruiz fight, a WBC final eliminator that services as a segue to another Fury fight. You know, in my previous video, I questioned as to whether or not that's what Wilder's handlers and his team, is that what they really want?
Doesn't sound like it.
In any event, Usyk's all tied up with this order from the IBF. Eddie Hearn, who co-promotes Wilder-Usyk's IBF mandatory challenger Filip Hrgovic, he was quoted as saying, "We just got the news through that Usyk has been ordered to fight Filip Hrgovic next." Eddie Hearn, chairman of Matchroom Sport, confirmed to DAZN's Claudia Trejos, preceding a live telecast from Cleveland, Ohio, the Love versus Sparks fight this past weekend. He is the mandatory challenger. We've actually requested an immediate purse bid for that fight. That's going to be next for Wilder-Usyk.
How could he be so confident?
Matchroom alongside Wasserman co-promote Filip Hrgovic as a fighter. In truth, I don't think the alphabet titles are in any danger of changing hands in a match between Usyk and Filip Hrgovic, especially not how Filip looked in his last fight against Chinese up-and-comer, Chinese southpaw Zhilei Zhang.
Yeah, he looked like shit.
Most people were expecting Filip Hrgovic to make short work of Zhilei Zhang, who went life or death with Jerry Forrest 1 or 2 fights ago. You figure that Filip, given his background and, his youth and his size and his power, this should be a cakewalk for him, and it was anything but. And if Zhilei Zhang could make that guy look that way, how's Usyk gonna make him look?
Seemed like Filip was struggling with Zhilei Zhang, who fights out of the southpaw stance.
He was struggling with a southpaw. You know who else is a southpaw? Usyk's a southpaw. But he's got all the mobility and athleticism, the elusiveness.
You were struggling with an aging Zhilei Zhang. What are you going to look like with Usyk?
He's a harder target, harder to hit, harder to find in that ring, assuming they actually get this fight over the line. The onus is on the Usyk people to petition the IBF for an exemption to the mandatory.
The onus is on the Usyk people and the Fury people to do what they've got to do so that this mandatory challenger can be circumvented and they can move forward with their fight. They're the ones that have got to work that out.
Eddie Hearn's job in all of this, his role, is to do what he's got to do for his fighter. His fighter in this situation is Filip Hrgovic.
He's not doing anything that Baba Frank wouldn't do. Case in point, Anthony Yarde.
By all rights, Auteur Beterbievo's next fight ought to be Bivol, but his next fight's against his mandatory challenger, Anthony Yarde. Who set that up? Bob and Frank set that up.
So you think that Eddie Hearn set this up?
Not exactly. The IBF ordered the fight, so now he's got to do what he's got to do for his fighter.
I don't think Eddie Hearn has that kind of pull, that kind of juice with the IBF to make things like this happen. Not necessarily, but now that they've ordered the fight, he's got to do his due diligence for the guy he promotes.
I mean, if Eddie Hearn had that kind of pull and that kind of juice with the IBF, Joe Cordina wouldn't have got stripped so soon after winning the red belt at 130 pounds.
Yeah, I don't know that Eddie has that much sway with the IBF. Looks to me like they ordered the fight, and since they ordered the fight, he's got to do what he's got to do.
But as stated, if Bob Arum and Egis Klimas and Tyson Fury and Wilder-Usyk, if they're all committed to the undisputed title fight, they'll do what they've got to do. They'll move heaven and earth to move forward with it.
Something's going on here. I'm not sure what it is.
I can't put my finger on it. But if Usyk does end up sharing the ring with Filip Hrgovic, as stated, I don't think the titles are in any danger of changing hands. I'd go with Usyk to outpoint Filip Hrgovic.
I think the question that comes up with that fight not happening, right, is legacy. Legacy is always such a big word in boxing. What legacy do you think you've earned right now, and is it where you want it to be?
Of course, of course. When you look at Terrence Crawford legacy compared to Errol Spence legacy, it's night and day. And I don't mean to throw shade on the brother. I'm just speaking facts. Whether they can say whatever they want, they can hate and say, oh, well, he fought this guy, he fought that guy. They can say whatever they want. But for Terrence Crawford legacy, you're going to say he's a 3-weight world champion. He's an undisputed world champion. He's a fighter of the year. He's an ESPY award winner. He's a lineal champion in 2 different weight classes. He's undefeated. And he never had a close fight ever in his boxing career.
These are simple matters of fact, ladies and gentlemen. As a fighter, Terrence Crawford is a lot more accomplished than Errol is. So in terms of legacy overall, he does have him beat. He is a 3-division, 2-time lineal, 2-time Ring Magazine, ESPY Award winner, Fighter of the Year,
Former undisputed, current reigning.
It's not a debate, folks. It's not a question of who's more accomplished as a fighter. It's a finite, conclusive matter of fact that Terrence Crawford's body of work is far more robust than Errol Spence Jr.'s.
Now, if in spite of this you like Errol a little bit more than you like Terrence, or you like Errol a lot more than you like Terrence, well, that just boils down to preference, but that doesn't mean that Errol's anywhere near as accomplished as Terrence Crawford.
He's not. How long is this undisputed run? This undisputed campaign Errol's been on? How long has that been going on? Because I've seen a good number of fighters, Terrence Crawford included, become undisputed champions.
Usyk did it. Josh Taylor did it.
Clarissa Shields, Katie Taylor,
Canelo Alvarez. Naoya Ino is about to do it at bantamweight. Alicia Baumgardner is about to do it at super featherweight. Amanda Serrano is about to do it at featherweight.
Errol Spence Jr. picked up his first alphabet title in, what was it, 2017? How long ago was that?
5 years.
From the time Terrence Crawford picked up his first alphabet title at 140 pounds, it didn't take him 5 years to become an undisputed champion, nor did it take Josh Taylor that amount of time. Usyk,
It didn't take him 5 years. It didn't take Jermell Charlo 5 years. I mean, do you see what I'm getting at?
you can like Errol Spence Jr. till the cows come home. You can love him. But what you can't do is claim that he's anywhere near as accomplished as these fighters. Moreover, you can't claim he's anywhere near as accomplished as Terrence Crawford.
He isn't. That's a simple matter of fact.
You got all these guys on the internet performing mental gymnastics to try to talk up Errol Spence Jr.'s wins over Terrence Crawford's wins. They'll go as far as cutting off entire sections of Terrence Crawford's resume, relegating it to just his welterweight campaign, when we all know he's campaigned at more weights than welterweight.
What, are you doing that because Errol Spence Jr. spent all these years at one weight?
That's desperate. Terrence Crawford has already punched his ticket to the Hall of Fame by seeing himself become an undisputed champion in the 4-belt era. Something, I'm sorry to say, Errol Spence Jr. may never see himself do. An accomplishment he may never accomplish.
That stuff matters, man.
Spence's fans have taken a liking to claiming that he's done all the heavy lifting at welterweight, whilst simultaneously encouraging those PBC welterweights to freeze out Terrence Crawford when, upon arriving at welterweight, he was already more accomplished than all of them, more accomplished than Keith Thurman, more accomplished than Sean Porter and Danny Garcia and Errol Spence.
I'll tell you, Errol did all the heavy lifting.
Whilst making excuses for those same PBC guys not to fight Crawford, only so that you'll accuse him of having a paper-thin resume for not having fought those guys.
As many excuses as you guys have been making, you don't want Terrence to fight those guys.
You never did. And you never wanted him to fight Errol either, because underneath it all, you know what'll happen.
We all do.
Underneath it all, everybody knows.